Right, anyone who's familiar with my videos will know that I like to compile lists, and before I've done the top 10 draws of the Monday Night Wars, the top 10 pay-per-view draws of the 90s, now I've put together a list of the top 10 pay-per-view draws of the 1980s in professional wrestling. And I can only get numbers for the American companies, which were at the time the WWE, or the WWF, WCW/NWA, in fact it was NWA back then, and the AWA. So here is the list I've compiled of the top 10 pay-per-view draws between those three companies combined. Now the AWA only did one show, so their numbers didn't have an impact really on my list. And my list starts in at number 10, the Junkyard Dog. He was a big draw in the NWA back in the 80s, and I think Memphis he worked like that territory as well, and he really was a big draw. But the thing was that he wasn't really heavily featured on many NWA cards, and even the ones that he was featured on, they didn't draw massive numbers. They drew okay numbers, but compared to the numbers WWE were drawing, they didn't draw massive numbers. Of course, he was on WrestleMania 3 against Harley Race as well, so he did contribute to that as well. But overall, he wasn't a huge draw compared to some other guys, but again, number 10 on the list. Number 9, now this might be surprising that he's so low down. It was to me when I compiled the numbers and I saw how low he was. It was the Macho Man Randy Savage. Now, in main event in WrestleMania 4, he was a main character, main guy in the feud with Hulk Hogan. It was Savage and Zeus against Hogan and Beefcake, and there was a lot of spin-offs around that. The Hogan and Zeus thing. What's it called now? No Holds Barred, the film with Hulk Hogan and Tiny Lister Jr., who played the Zeus character and the Zeus wrestler. So yeah, I was quite surprised when I saw that Macho Man came so low down on my list, number 9. He was a massive guy in the 80s for the WWF. Of course, in the 90s, Vince McMahon screwed him a little bit by keeping him on-screen character, but not an in-ring wrestler, just an outside-the-ring character. That's why Macho Man ended up jumping to WCW, because he felt that he had more to contribute rather than just being an announcer. Number 8 is the guy who was also in this series with Savage, and it's Zeus. Zeus comes so high up because they had No Holds Barred as a pay-per-view back in the day, and that drew such big numbers because it was a film as well, so like people really wanted to see it. Like, along with Hulk Hogan, who was just a massive draw, the biggest draw of all time in the wrestling industry. When it comes to pay-per-views anyway. Zeus, like, he was a rubbish in-ring worker, but he was a massive draw. People really wanted to see, because people believed that this guy was a monster and he could really tear up Hulk Hogan, so people really wanted to see this guy. Number 7 is Brutus the Barber Beefcake. Now, he was involved with a lot of the Hulk Hogan stuff. He was an okay worker, don't get me wrong, but you know, he sort of rode Hulk Hogan's coattails throughout the 80s and the 90s, and you know, I was quite surprised. Everyone's quite surprised that he's not turned up in TNA yet, because you know, he's always been the guy right behind Hogan. Hogan's brought him everywhere that he's gone. Hogan thought he could rely on him, and you know, he's treated him quite well over the years. Number 6, a massive guy in the NWA in the 80s, and he also appeared on WrestleMania 2 or 4. It was one of the early WrestleManias. It's Ronnie Garvin. Ronnie Garvin, to me, he was an alright worker, and obviously Randy Orton nowadays has stolen the Ronnie Garvin stomp, where he goes all around the body and stomping on each body part one by one to weaken the opponent. So that is stolen from Ronnie Garvin, for those of you who don't know. I'm sure a lot of you did know that. So yeah, Ronnie Garvin, he was a big draw in the NWA. I think he had notable feuds with, was it Ric Flair and maybe the Junkyard Dog as well, towards the end of the 90s, and I think he main evented one of the Starcades and one of the other early NWA pay-per-views, which I can't remember off the top of my head. Number 5, Lex Luger, a massive draw in the 80s for the NWA. A lot of people don't really understand how big of a draw Lex Luger was. He'd come from, I'm not sure he played it in the NFL, but I think he played in the CFL, and he played college football, which, you know, is quite respected over in America. I'm not like, over here it doesn't translate, because obviously we're not in England, we're not massive fans of American football on the whole, never mind amateur level of college level. So yeah, Lex Luger came from there straight into the NWA. Ended up in the NWA basically, and became a massive draw. You know, he had the body, he had a bit of charisma. He could work to a decent level. Don't get me wrong, but he wasn't an amazing worker. He wasn't a Ric Flair or a Ricky Steamboat, but still he was really up there in terms of a draw. Number 4, Ted DiBiase Sr. This guy had notable feud with Hulk Hogan back in the day. You know, we all know the stuff about Andre the Giant beating Hulk Hogan for the title and then selling it to Macho Man Randy Savage straight away, and then the title being held up for the title tournament. WrestleMania 4, we all think Savage is going to win it. No, sorry, not Savage, DiBiase is going to win it, but no, it ends up being Savage winning the title. They main evented that WrestleMania. You know, DiBiase went on to main event many things with Hulk Hogan back in the 80s. Number 3, the NWA's key player back in the day, Ric Flair. You know, he's so high up on the list, not because of the high numbers that the NWA were getting, but because he was so consistent, and he was the main guy. He was the guy they could rely on to draw numbers and to, you know, carry guys to feuds for the world title and whatnot. Ric Flair was really up there. Well, obviously he was the top guy in the NWA in the 80s, in my opinion, and probably a lot of people's opinion, especially Ric Flair's own opinion. If you ever hear a Ric Flair shooting interview, he always talks himself up and how good he was. Number 2, Andre the Giant. Now, off the top of my head, I can think of one event that he main evented, and that's WrestleMania 3. But that drew such a massive number. You can't believe the numbers that WWE were drawing back then compared to today, especially. They were drawing phenomenal numbers like back in the day. A lot of people were really interested in watching what was going on in the WWF. I think was it WrestleMania 4. The tagline was WWE, what the world is talking about, or whatever. It was true that the whole world was talking about the WWE, and it was a really important, like a really massive thing back in the day. Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, who's going to win, and Hulk slamming Sir Andre. It's a massive moment in wrestling history. And obviously, number 1, Hulk Hogan. What can we say about him? He probably main evented 95% of the WWE's pay-per-views in the 80s, drawing massive numbers, drew the massive following of Hulkamania, drew a lot of people to WWF, which has still lasted to this day and kept them on top as the number 1 company in the world. Back then, you know, before Hulk Hogan came in, you could probably say that WWE was slightly better than the NWA and than the AWA as well, but they weren't that much higher. And now look at them. They're pretty much the only wrestling company around. No one even compares TNA to the WWE. No one compares the Japanese organisations. Nobody compares the Mexican companies, because the WWE is just seen as the best company. And it's all, in my opinion, it all stems from Hulk Hogan. Obviously, Vince McMahon had a huge part to play in that as well. But you know, if you don't have a Hulk Hogan, you couldn't have based that off Macho Man Randy Savage. No offense to Savage, because he was an awesome talent, but he had nowhere near the star power of Hulk Hogan and the drawing power. That's why Hulk Hogan, in my opinion, is a top draw in the wrestling industry in the 1980s. And that is it for my list. Just to run down the top list for you, anyone interested in hearing them again. Number 10, Junkyard Dog. Number 9, Macho Man Randy Savage. Number 8, Zeus. 7, Brutus Beefcake. 6, Ronnie Garvin. 5, Lex Luger. 4, Ted DiBiase Sr. 3, Ric Flair. 2, Andre the Giant. And number 1, TNA's very own Hulk Hogan. Actually, if you notice in that list, you've got two of those guys sort of active in TNA nowadays. That says a lot about TNA. They really need to let go of the past. They need to put these 2 guys out to pasture. Sure, keep them on as guys who can help out behind the scenes, but not as in-ring talents. Please stop using them as that. And obviously, you got Ted DiBiase Sr. who still works behind the scenes at WWE. So you know, these guys, like 3 of the top 4, are still involved in wrestling nowadays, and the other one's Andre the Giant, who's sadly passed away. So yeah, that's my list, and keep watching my videos. Bye.